Okay, so a few months ago, we posted several videos of the WFX speaker demos that were held in Nashville. Now, there were about 14 different speaker systems there, and most of those were line array systems, and that's where I focused most of my attention. So in this video, I want to do sort of a review and overview of what we saw, and also give some opinions and tips for people that are looking into buying a line array system. So there are going to be a lot of factors that you're looking at when you start to look at any new speaker system, but especially a line array system. If you're like me, you're looking to buy this for yourself or for your church or for some special project, and you're going to do a lot of research. I did the same thing 2 years ago and spent almost 2 months researching, compiling list of data and spreadsheets, talking to manufacturers and reps, and traveling to hear different systems so I could get an idea of what's in the market. So a couple of the first things that I was looking at is all of the technical specs: size, weight, driver configuration, wattage, maximum SPL, two-way or three-way configuration, the brand, reputation, whether it was powered or unpowered, built-in DSP, network controllable, and of course, probably the most important variable, which is cost and value. And I'll go over all of those in more detail. At the demo at WFX, we did see 12 line array systems, all from top manufacturers, some that most everyone's heard of, and other ones that are great manufacturers that you may not have heard of, but it certainly doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider those manufacturers. A few of the cool stats from the WFX demo, amongst the 12 different line array boxes, were ranges of variables here. So for example, all speakers had either 6.5, 8-inch, or 10-inch low frequency drivers. They were all either two-way or three-way. The max SPL ranged anywhere from 123 to 143 decibels. That's a huge span there of 20 decibels. And the boxes weighed anywhere from 30 pounds to 135 pounds, another huge variable there. And lastly, the boxes ranged in price from $3,000 to $14,900 per box. So almost 5 times the difference in price, almost 4 times the difference in weight ranges. So there are a lot of variables. And one of the shocking things that I can reveal on this video is that all of them sounded good. Most of them sounded great. And of course, over half of them were really incredible. So one thing that you can take away from this is that if you are to buy a line array system from a top manufacturer, you're not buying a bad system, because they simply don't exist. Now, we can debate all day long subtle differences that are very important, but actual performance issues, as important as they are, have become a smaller factor because, again, it's not some kind of mystical science anymore. There are a lot of top companies now that are making top-notch professional line array boxes. So talking about some of the sound quality issues, if you've listened back through the videos that I've already posted, I think you'll notice they all sound pretty good. There might be one or two that pop out as a very strange bump in the mid-range that sounds very nasally and honky, and I'll be honest, that those do come across live as well, and we almost immediately eliminated those as something's wrong or they're voiced in an odd way. So another point I want to make about the videos is that even though a YouTube video is not obviously the most perfect way to qualify a speaker system, it certainly is one tool in the overall research that you're going to be doing. And rarely are you going to be able to hear 12 line array systems in the same room side by side. And I can tell you that what I hear playing back my YouTube video is very consistent with what I heard in the room. And the subtle differences do come across. And those subtle differences sometimes can simply be EQ, a little higher, a little lower, too much mid, not as much mid, too much bass, those kind of things. And I always say, if it's something that I can describe as an EQ problem, we can fix it with EQ. So that just goes back to, again, saying that all of the systems really sounded great. Only a couple didn't sound well, and I would honestly say that it was probably because of the way they were dialed in or tuned. Now, during and after the event, I polled around 8 different engineers for a top 6 and a top 4. A couple questions I had would be, well, why was this one in the top 4? It clearly wasn't the big name brand. And I can tell you that a couple of people, including myself as judges, we picked boxes based on overall criteria, and cost was one of those, meaning that if one box sounded 90% as good as another box, but it was 400% less in price, that had a really high value, and it got judged highly in our overall selection. I think value is a word that you have to look at with line arrays, and that ratio of cost and performance. Again, going back to, let's say, a $15,000 box, I'll be honest with you, no one picked the $15,000 box as a best box or a top 4 or a top 6. Now, there are things that that box can do that no other box can come close to because of the technology in it. But from a pure listening standpoint, it doesn't sound any better than a $3,000 box. And that's where value comes in. So that's always going to be something to weigh very heavily, is cost and value. The other spec to look at very closely is wattage. A lot of people get tied up into, well, how many watts is it? I must confess, I did too. I'll say now that wattage literally means nothing, because wattage and speaker efficiency can really throw either one of those two parameters off. High wattage, low efficiency is going to give you a very low max SPL. Low wattage and extremely high efficiency drivers is going to give you a high SPL. So volume may or may not be one of the highest criteria you're looking at, but we may be doing an acoustic event, an a cappella event. Some weekends we're doing bluegrass, and other weekends we're doing full-on rock concerts to several thousand people. So I have to have a single system that can do all of that. And max SPL was the criteria that I had to look at. You'll notice on some of the specs here as we're flipping through these, most of those are going to be above 130. A lot of people who have asked me once they've seen my videos, well, which was the best system? There is no best. Do I have a personal preference? Yeah, probably so. If I had to pick any one system that really floored me, it would have been the Martin Audio MLA Mini. For a few reasons. Martin Audio, if you don't know, is considered one of the top brands in the world. And they're probably not as popular in America as they are in Europe. So a lot of Americans don't know that brand, usually because the systems are so expensive they're rarely even seen. But the MLA Mini price point came in at the second lowest price on a per box calculation, which was fairly impressive. And the box was also one of the smallest. It was one of the dual 6.5s. So the box and the system was extremely small, and the amount of sound that came out of that small box was pretty amazing. It did have a lower max SPL at 130, but still, if you're not looking for a big rock box, that was probably the nicest, smoothest sound of anything that I heard. Now, some of the expensive boxes, I'll go ahead and mention those by brand. Obviously, the l-acoustics Cara at $6,980 per box. It was another great one. And the RCF TTL33 at $58.12 was another top box. I'll mention the DB Technologies T8. The reason it made the top 6 and the top 4 was because it was equally as good sounding. You could debate subtle differences, but the price made it a contender because it sounds as good as anything else that cost in the $6,000, even $15,000 range. So it quickly became a favorite because for a lot of people, it may be the only one you can afford. And the quality was so great, it allows you to see that is a solution for me. And I'll go ahead and be transparent here and say that 2 years ago, when I did my 2 months of research and considered everything, probably started out with about 15 brands, quickly started going through my criteria. I wanted a small, lightweight box. I wanted to have at least a dual 10 or 12-inch main driver. I didn't want to go into a mini line array like a 6.5 or an all-8 driver system. And I also had to have powered. I wanted network control. I wanted high SPL. And when I started going through that and looking at the overall price, it did lead me to DB Technologies, and we bought the T12 and T8 system. Even 2 years later, there's still nothing on the market that can compare with what you get for those at the price. The other thing that's a huge consideration is making sure that you realize that if you are to get what I call a dumb box, which is just a box with no built-in DSP or amplification, and if the manufacturer doesn't offer their own amplifier pack, you're going down, a road that could end up being a very big problem, because at this point, you're going to pick your own speaker, your own amplifier, your own DSP, and then you're going to pick your own DSP settings. So I would strongly suggest no one buy a dumb box and then try to use your old amplifiers and your old DBX drive rack and try to find some settings and build that system yourself. That's the old way of doing things, 10 or 15 years ago, but it's not a good path to go down now. You want to get the system completely configured from the manufacturer as a powered system, or if you do go unpowered, you're going to want to buy their drive rack or their drive packs that has everything pre-programmed into it. All right, so I just wanted to present that information. Obviously, go back and listen to the 5 or 6 videos that I posted. If you have any questions, let us know on our YouTube page or on our Facebook page.